Hari Om. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam. Niranandamanandamadvaitapurnam. Param nirgunam nirvichesham niriham. Parabrahmarupam Ganesham Bhajema. Parabrahmarupam Ganesham Bhajema. Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Namaste. Welcome to session 112 of Bhagavad Gita verse by verse. Last week, in our 111th session, we completed study of chapter 14 called Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. Next week, in our session 113, we are going to begin study of one of the very small and very important chapter 15 called Purushottama Yoga. Before embarking on study of 15th chapter, today we will resume study of Mundaka Upanishad from where we had left. In today's class, we will be taking up verses 6 to 10 in Khanda 2 of Mundaka 2. At the end of the class, Srimati Meenakshi Shanmugam will be chanting Garuda Gamana Tava Charana Kamalamiha, a beautiful composition of Vishnu Stuti by His Holiness Sri Sri Bharati Tirtha Swamiji. Now, it's time to listen to the introduction of today's topic by Dr. Hegde sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Pariyantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We continue the study of the Mundaka Upanishad. As a quick recap, the first verse began by telling us the actual source, Brahma Devanam Prathama Sambhabhuva. This Upanishad has come to us none other than from Brahmaji himself, and he gave it to his Jeshta Putra, and from him came to the teacher of the present Upanishad, Angiras. Angiras is teaching to Shaunaka, a prepared student, and who asks one of the most fascinating questions ever that the Upanishads have. All Upanishads begin with is a question answer, and the question and the entire Upanishad is the answer to the question. And the question in this Upanishad is, "Oh Bhagwan, oh my Guru, my teacher, can you tell me that knowledge, knowing which everything worth knowing is known?" So the student is now aware that the teacher knows about something which is really worth knowing. So the teacher begins to say that all knowledge can be divided into para and apara. Apara is all the worldly knowledge that is required, like medical knowledge or engineering knowledge and so on, that where you learn to make a living in this world and to contribute to this world. But there is another kind of knowledge, which the teacher says is called Paravidya, which teaches us about our real true nature. And if you get that knowledge gives us Parama Purushartha, it gives us freedom, it gives us tremendous amount of peace, security, and happiness. The Mundaka Upanishad, at the conclusion of the first Mundaka, there are 3 Mundakas, each of them have got 2 sections or khandas. At the conclusion of the first Mundaka, there is this very powerful or very famous mantra called Pariksha Lokan Karmachitan Brahman. I had spoken about this many times, but this is a turning point in our spiritual endeavor, a turning point towards the spiritual endeavor when we realize that all our material efforts are not going to take us very far. It is like going towards the horizon. The faster we go, we will see the more you know, the more you need to know. The gap is always there. But then if you find a teacher like the teacher of this Upanishad, and of course there are such teachers available, and we are very fortunate to have one such teacher in Swami Paramarthananda, who is able to give us Brahma Vidya as clearly as the Upanishadic teachers are able to give. Then our life takes a 180-degree turn. Suddenly, this world and all the accomplishment in this world now becomes relatively not so important. Important enough because I require this world for my own existence. But now I know my priorities are elsewhere. I need to focus on something else. And therefore, whatever the Guru tells me, and the first thing that I need to do is surrender my ego to the Guru and be available to the learning. So the teacher now introduces us through various scriptural texts, particularly the Upanishads. And one of the most fundamental Upanishads is the Mundaka Upanishad. As you will see, the Prathama Khanda is over. The Prathama Mundaka second Khanda concludes with that 12th mantra. 12th, and then there is one more mantra, the 13th mantra. We are now towards the end of the Dvitiya Mundaka. The Dvitiya Mundaka has got 2 khandas. We are in the second khanda. And the topic that is talked about here is called Paravidya, the highest knowledge. The highest knowledge of Advaita Vedanta is to discover the truth, which is called Brahma Satyam. That means you can hear my voice. It's not your ears that is listening. It's not your mind, but there is a conscious entity in each one of us who is able to listen. That conscious entity is the only reality. My body, mind, and the world that around me is of a lower order, like a mirage, like a dream stuff, and therefore important because I live in this world, but I should give relative importance. You will see in this section, and particularly in the verses in this class, that the consciousness in me is none other than Paramatma, Bhagavan, the highest. And that discovery is seen in the verses that we are going to study today. Of all the verses, in the second Mundaka, towards the end of the first Kanda, there is this very important mantra. I will call it perhaps the most important mantra in the entire Mundaka Upanishad, because this mantra answers the question that Shaunaka came to Angirasa, O Bhagwan, O my Guru, what is that? Knowing which everything worth knowing becomes known. This mantra has to be studied, learned by heart, chanted every day, and listened to the essence of this mantra. Purusha eva idam vishwam. This whole world that I experience is none other than Purusha or Brahman. Brahman itself, consciousness itself, has become this world. Now, my world is different from your world. Why is that? Because all our karma and tapaha, all our past karmas and tapaha have given rise to a world. Although we live in the same world, our experiences are different because that is part of our own past karma and tapaha. Now, if I'm able to understand that the existent world around me is none other than the consciousness in me, that is the meaning of yetad yo veda nihitam guhaya. If I am able to understand, this phrase is the Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam, that the consciousness principle in me is the one that lends existence to the whole world. That means I am playing a dual role of existence outside and consciousness within me. That understanding, so avidya granthim, that knot of ignorance, dikirati, is destroyed. Where? Important is iha, in this life. Oh Saumya. Saumya is a very, very important word. Where the teacher is addressing the student as, oh dear one, I want you to pay attention. Make this effort. You will be able to discover it in this life and see that your life is utterly fulfilled. The next Khanda of the second Mundaka gave us a set of beautiful examples, predominantly with the example of the bow and arrow, where the Omkara is given now not as an upasana, but Omkara is given as a vichara. That means we need to be able to understand the significance of Omkara, to be able to discover that the target where which the bow and the Omkara is going to take to you is none other than you. There is no gap between you and your goal. With this background, let us listen to the verses of today's class. The opening speaker will be Gautam Devakar. Dr. Devakar, please.
Thank you, sir. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Ara iva rathanabhau samhata yatra nadyaha sa eshontaras charate bahudha jayamanaha omityevam dhyayatha atmanam swastivaha paraya tamasah parastat. This mantra helps us in shifting our attention from the variable changing body-mind complex to the non-variable Chaitanya Tattvam, which is the Atma. Here, Upanishad takes an example of a wheel with spokes and hub to explain how we can shift our focus from the Anatma, which is the body-mind complex, to Atma. The next slide, we see Ara iva rathanabhau samhataha. Araha means spokes. Just as the spokes of a wheel are rathanabhau samhataha, fixed onto the hub of the wheel. Similarly, yatra, in the hridayam, which is the hub of the individual, nadyaha samhataha, the crisscrossing nadis or the connections of the body are connected to the heart. Here the Upanishad is asking us to trace the leads of these connections and come to the heart. So here the body is compared to the wheel, where the anatomical structure of the body is like the wheel rim and the heart is the hub, and all the nadis, the blood vessels, or the connections from the all parts of the body, just like the spokes connecting the rim and the hub. Here we can see the Panchakosha Viveka. Then the mantra says, having brought the focus from the Annamaya Kosha to the heart, which is the Pranamaya Kosha, move to the more subtler aspect, which is the Manomaya Kosha, or the mind. As per Shastras, Manas is in the heart. In the next slide, we see, then within the mind, become aware of Sa Eshaha, the consciousness principle, which is Bahuda Jayamanaha, continuously rising and falling. Consciousness is continuously rising and falling. That's what the Upanishad is telling. And now let us analyze that further. And it is in what form is it rising and falling? Antah charate. In the mind, consciousness is rising and falling in the form of varieties of sensory experiences. Swami Paramarthananda supplies the word Anubhava Rupena. Vividha Anubhava Rupena Jayate. It appears and disappears. We know that the Atma, the consciousness, never changes. Here, when it is said that the consciousness is rising and falling, what it means is that the Sat Chit Ananda Atma lends sentience to the body-mind. And that reflected consciousness in the form of the mind, which is also called as Chidabhasa or the Pratibimba Chaitanyam. Through this reflected consciousness, our mind uses the sense organs and comes in contact with the sense objects, which is the world itself. So the mind, through the 5 sense organs, the 5 windows, which are the Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, and Gandha, comes in contact with the sense objects. As a result, what happens? The varieties of thoughts are generated in the mind. Each thought is called as a vritti. So when the mind comes in contact with the sound, it arises Shabda vritti. When a mosquito bites us, we get a Sparsha vritti, and so on. These thoughts are the vritti, or the ones which appear and disappear. Sentience to the thoughts is by the consciousness principle, and therefore only when the consciousness and the thought join together, every thought will become an experience. So because of the Chaitanya Sambandha, the thought is converted into an experience. But the problem is we only focus on the thought part, but not on the consciousness principle, which is the Chaitanyam, which is lending the existence to that thought. We forget that behind every experience, we have a consciousness, sentience principle, which is nothing but the Chaitanya Atma. And that is the illuminator of that experience. This light of consciousness is in the mind itself. So Upanishad is guiding us to become more subtler and asking us to turn our attention from the illumined to the illuminator, which is the Chaitanyam, by navigating through the changing thoughts to the changeless Atma. In the next slide, we see Om Ityevam Dhyayata Atmanam. May you turn your attention to this Atma and practice Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Dhyayata means Nididhyasanam, which is the contemplative Vedantic meditation. Although any mantra can be used for Nididhyasanam, here Omkara, which is the Pranava, is recommended for the Nididhyasanam. By associating consciousness with Omkara, one can meditate on Atma. Om has A, U, and which represents our Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti stages respectively, and the silence which follows represents the Atma Tattvam or the Turiya state. With thorough Atmagnanam and with Omkara Nididhyasanam, one can convert the spiritual knowledge into an emotional strength. And all the limitations of the body, mind, and the world and its problems can be put into a perspective with this Omkara Dhyanam or Omkara contemplation. To get to this stage, it takes a lot of time, but it is very much possible within this life itself. So we need prayatna, which is called as effort, and prasada, the grace of the God, to attain to this transformation. So Upanishad says, Swastivaha. It is blessing us with bon voyage for the successful spiritual journey. This journey should start earlier in our life than at the fag end, where the body faculties may not cooperate. This spiritual journey helps us reach the shore. The word used here is paraya, meaning the shore of the samsara sagara, which is tamasah parastat, that is the ocean of the ignorance. So the distance between myself and my goal is not measured in the time or space, but it is measured by the level of ignorance or the agnanam. The distance between the jivatma, the one which is myself, and my goal, which is the Paramatma, is same as the distance between the ocean and the wave. Hari Om sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Divakar. That was a brilliant explanation of a very, very important verse where the Upanishad now gives us a picture. It gives us a certain picture in the form of the spokes and the hub and a wheel of a chariot. Now, this represents constant activity in the world outside. Even as I am in activity, even as I am speaking to you, can I become aware of that interiority, that someone within me who is aware of everything? Can you move from the periphery, the noise of your life, to the center of your life? And this movement from the periphery to the center is the whole inward journey called Atma Jnanam as a means for moksha. In every experience, you are listening to me, you're hearing my voice, you are understanding a few words. Who is there within you who is listening to all this? If you can see my hand, in every experience, when I see any object, I see the object, but I also forget that I'm able to see that object because of light on that object. Because with every thought, there is someone who is illumining that thought. That thought is the Atma within my mind, which is located in the heart. The Upanishads use these words, mind and the heart, synonymously. When I'm awake, I'm aware of all parts of my body. So that means my mind is everywhere in my body. When I go to sleep, the mind now comes into the center. The center they refer to as the heart. And that heart is where the Atma is. Atma is everywhere. But if you want to locate one place where the Atma is manifest, you talk it as the cave of my heart. Now, this understanding can be deepened through Omkara Vichara. And that is why the Upanishad also wishes us, oh Soumya, oh dear one, do these exercises. The teacher can only encourage us to put on the path, but our effort is ours. And what really will help you to go beyond is bhakti, where the grace of the Lord will help you to understand these subtle thoughts and which make all the difference. We have another mantra which will be explained to us by Dr. Vasumati. Dr. Vasumati, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The verse 7 goes like this. Ya sarvagnaha sarvavid yasya esha mahima bhuvi divye brahmapure hesha vyomanatma pratishtitaha. This verse continues with the Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam. So it's a Mahavakya mantra. The first line talks about the glory of Brahman, the Paramatma. The second line talks about the Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam. Next slide, sir. What is that Paramatma or Brahman? Next. Sarvagnaha sarvavid Brahma yasya esha mahima bhuvihi. Not only Brahman is the omniscient creator of this world, Brahman happens to be the very material cause of the universe also. Therefore, Brahman alone has become the world. If Brahman himself has become the world becomes the manifestation of Brahman, and therefore, whatever glory is found in the world, all of them belong to Brahman. Upanishad says, all of the creation, from the smallest atom to the largest star, from the unicellular organism to the most complicated human being, whatever glories we experience in this creation, all of them belong to the Brahman. Next slide, sir. Where is that Brahman located? Divye Brahmapure Eshaha Mahipratishthitaha. That Brahman, the cause of the universe, is this Jivatma, and it is very much within your body, located in your heart. What type of heart? The divine or sacred residence of Brahman, the presence of Brahman makes it sacred. Why do we say Paramatma is installed in the heart? According to scripture, the physical heart is the location of the non-physical mind of a jiva. Within the mind, thoughts are there. Behind the thoughts, the consciousness is there, illumining the presence of thoughts as well as the absence of thoughts, as the witness of every thought rising and setting. That consciousness is Brahman. We can compare our physical body to a temple, and the Panchakoshas are the Prakaras, and the heart is the Sanctum Sanctorum. Within the heart, there is a small space called Hrudayakasha, also called as the Harakasha, where the Atma is installed. Therefore, the all-pervading Lord is installed in the heart as consciousness, Chaitanya Rupena Pratishtitaha. Next slide, sir. Next verse goes like this. Manomaya Prana Sharira Neta Pratishtito Ne Hrudayam Sannidhaya Tad Vignanena Paripashyanti Dhiraha Anandarupam Amrutam Yat Vibhati. Next slide, sir. The glory of Brahman is referred here as Manomayaha. Manomayaha is the name of Paramatma. Normally, Manomaya refers to one of the koshas, but in this mantra, it does not refer to a kosha. Manomaya here is the Sakshi Chaitanya Atma. Why is that Atma is called Manomayaha? Paramatma is conditioned by or enclosed by the Manomaya mind, just as the all-pervading space is enclosed within the temple. An enclosed space is useful for transactions, while unenclosed space is not useful. In the same way, unenclosed consciousness, Sarvagata Chaitanyam, is not useful for Vyavahara, but the very same consciousness enclosed in the mind becomes Jivatma. Thus, unenclosed Atma is called Paramatma, enclosed Atma is called Jivatma. Paramatma obtains in the mind as Jivatma and has got a special title, Manomayaha. Mind enclosed consciousness is therefore Manomaya. Next slide, sir. What does this consciousness do? Prana Sharira Neta. Prana Sharira means Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body. It consists of 17 organs, namely Panchakarmendriyas, Panchagnanendriyas, Panchaprana, mind and intellect. Most important of these is prana. Since prana is the most important part of Sukshma Sharira, the Sukshma Sharira gets the name Prana Shariram. Atma is called Sukshma Sharira Neta, and it blesses the Sukshma Sharira, enlivens it, and makes it remain in this physical body during our lifetime. Because of the blessing of the Atma, the Sukshma Sharira is able to travel from one body to another. Atma only facilitates the travel. It does not decide the direction of travel. The direction is determined by the karma of the Sukshma Sharira. Since the Atma blesses the movement, it is called Sukshma Sharira Neta. Neta means carrier. Where is the Atma located? Anne Pratishtitaha. Annam here means Annamaya Kosha, that is the physical body. Atma is installed in the physical body as the very Jivatma, the consciousness. If this physical body is the temple, what is the sanctum sanctorum? Hridayam Sannidhaya. The heart is the sanctum in which the Atma is present as the witness consciousness. One has to know the Atma. Atma Gnanam is a must for all people. But to attain this Atma Gnanam, one requires qualifications. Therefore, the teacher says, Dhiraha Paripashyanti. The qualified people, those people who have sadhana chatushte sampatti. In other words, those with mental purity, those mature people with gnana yogyata recognize this Atma. How? Tat vignanena, through the eye of wisdom, by gaining the Atma Gnana through Gnana Chakshuhu, symbolically represented by the third eye. What is the nature of this Sakshi Chaitanya Atma? Ananda Rupam. It is of the nature of Ananda, which should be understood as Purna Swarupam, fullness, free from limitation. Not only Purna, but it is also Amrutam, eternal, without an end, Nityam. The word Ananda in this context should not be taken as experiential pleasure, because any experiential pleasure is anitya, while Ananda here is Nitya. Nitya Ananda is a matter of owning up that I am Purnaha. This knowledge alone is Nityananda. That which is gained in terms of knowledge is never lost in time. Whatever is gained in terms of experience is lost in time. So Nityananda is got through knowledge alone. The knowledge that I was Purnaha, I am Purnaha, and I'll ever be Purnaha. If at all there was Apurnatvam, it was only my superimposition of notional limitation. Yat vibhati, that Ananda, which is always, all the time available as the consciousness principle, and through the eye of understanding, dropping the notional limitation, is the attainment of Ananda. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vasumati, for an explanation of a particularly long mantra, which begins with Sarvagnya Sarvavid. By Sanskrit grammar, both these words mean the same thing, but as you have explained, Sarvavid here it speaks about Paravidya or spiritual knowledge, and Sarvavid refers to Aparavidya. We are talking about that one who knows everything. And this is not the first time in the Mundaka Upanishad we have a mantra beginning with Sarvavid, Sarvagnya, and Sarvavid. In the first Mundaka, in the first Kanda, the 9th verse also begins the same way, Sarvagnya and Sarvavid. Then there is a line which says, Yasya Esha Mahima Bhuhi. All the glories belong to him. Whenever you see anything glorious, this glory refers to Paramatma. And this verse is supposed to be the seed for the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Our teacher helps us to see Brahman as two things. Whatever I see around me is existent. And because of the consciousness principle in me, which is called Chit, so the Brahman manifests within me as consciousness, which is technically referred to as Chit, and Brahman manifests outside me as existence, which is spoken about as Sat. So where do I discover Brahman? In the cave of my heart, which is also Brahmapura. Why do we go to a temple? when God is everywhere, when existence is everywhere, even though existence is everywhere, existence of Brahman manifests differently in different people. That is why we go to a temple, we go to a place of worship. That is why in remote temples in the Himalayas are really sort of like Badri, Kedar, Kailash. Why do people struggle to go there? Because it is in these places Brahman as existence manifests more brilliantly. And therefore, sometimes you will see a spiritually realized person, when the ego has disappeared, there is no filter of the ego, and such a person is able to manifest Brahman much more because Brahman is more manifest in such a person. This we have to accept, that there is a differential manifestation of Brahman in different places and in different persons. Anne Pratishtita. Brahman is located in my body, and where in my body? In the heart. And this we have to be able to discover as in the form of consciousness. So every Upanishadic mantra talks about two things: consciousness within me and existence outside me. The next verse will be explained to us by Dr. Anupama. Dr. Anupama, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Mantra 9. Bhidyate Hridaya Grantihi, Chidyante Sarva Samshayaha, Kshiyante Cha Asya Karmani, Tasmin Drishte Paravare. This means when Brahman is clearly understood, that is, Aparokshataya, as I myself, the following three phalams are attained. First, Hridaya Granti Veda, all our karmas or desires are destroyed. Sarva Samshaya Vichedaha, all doubts are eliminated. And Sarva Karma Kshayaha, all Sanchita and Agami karmas are destroyed. Let's analyze them individually. Vidyate Hridaya Grantihi. Here, Hridaya means mind and Grantihi means knot. Hridaya Granti means the desires here are compared to a knot. These desires reside in the mind and are nurtured by vasanas born out of ignorance. Desires are compared to a knot because an old knot is very often difficult to disentangle. Also, knots bind two different entities into one unit. Here, Atma and Anatma appear to be inseparably entangled in each of us. The cause of Hridaya Granti is ignorance. Let's understand this ignorance or ajnanam first. All the defects in our lives stem from this ignorance. Ignorance of the self or avidya is not just anadi, but available in abundance right from birth and up to death in a majority of us. When we track the mushrooming colony of avidya, we see that if avidya is the mother, kama is the child, karma is the grandchild, karma phalam is a great grandchild, and punarjanma is a great great grandchild. Vidyate here means Bhedam ayati, or comes to destruction of what? Hridaya Granti, the desires or karma get destroyed. Chidyante sarva samshaya. Here Chidyante means gets snapped or cut off. And sarva samshaya means sarva nyeya vishaya samshaya. All our perennial doubts regarding everything that is worth knowing, that is Nyeyam or Paravidya. Finally, Kshiyante cha asya karmani. Kshiyante means destroyed, asya means the jnanis, and karmani means both sanchita and agami karmas. Now, what about the prarabdha karmas? Prarabdha karmas are like a released arrow, unstoppable till the body dies. Mukta ishuvata, just like a released arrow cannot be stopped. Tasmin drishte paravare. Tasmin means that Brahman, the Sarvajna, Sarvavit, which we have heard in the mantra 7, And here it is described as Paravare. That means Param Chatat Avaram. That Brahman, which is both superior and inferior. How so? Karanatmana Param. That means superior as the cause. And Karyatmana Avaram. Inferior as the effect. Karya Karana Rupa Brahma. Drishte here means when Brahman is seen. Seen meaning not physically as Brahma Darshanam, but as Aparokshataya, as Sakshat Aham Asmi iti, Sakshat Aham Asmi iti Darshe. When Brahman is recognized as the self-evident consciousness, samsara is destroyed. When samsara is gone, all karmas, samshayas, and karmas go. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anupama, for a nice explanation of a very important verse. This verse comes elsewhere also. It comes at a very crucial conclusion of Drik Drishya Viveka. Whenever we are doing a lot of sadhana, whenever we're doing a lot of efforts, we need to know what is the end point, what are we going to achieve, what is the benefit that is there at the end of the road. And this verse, Vidyate Hridaya Granthi. The first is, as described by Dr. Anupama, ignorance is destroyed. The Bhagavad Gita repeatedly say all the problems in our life is based upon, all our suffering is based on ignorance. So suffering can disappear at once when all the ignorance goes. Second is, Sarva Samshaya Chidyanti. All the doubts have disappeared. You will remember in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 40, talks about that person who's ajnana, ashraddaya, and samshayatma, one who is full of samshaya. That person is not going to succeed in this world or in the world above. Look at that state. Then there is absolutely no doubts in your mind. That is why you call a jnani, who is able to be at peace in every situation because there is no doubts at all. And very importantly, all his karmas are destroyed. That means his account is now zero. There is no sanchita karma. He will not create any agami karma. The prarabdha karma now becomes insignificant to such a person now. Therefore, samsara is destroyed. A person is able to understand what is Karanam and Karya. The next verse will be explained to us by Rama Gopalakrishna. Rama, madam, please.
Hari Om, Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. The 9th mantra says, Hiranmaye pare koshe virajam brahma nishkalam tachubram jyotisham jyotis tadyadatma vido viduhu. In the next slide, we see Anmayartha and the meaning. In that supreme and effulgent Vijnanamaya Kosha or Buddhi, the spotless, partless, shiny, pure, and the light of all lights, that Brahman is available for realization. The knowers of Atma recognize that Brahman as oneself. The description of Brahman is displayed in the next slide. Virajam, free from all types of impurities, that is, Nitya Shuddham. Rajoguna of Maya causes Kartrutvadi impurities. Brahman is not tainted by Maya, although it is permanently associated with it. Next slide, sir, please. Nishkalam means indivisible. Kala means a part. One with parts will be a product and is anityam. That is, Nishkalam is partless and it will be a cause, which implies Brahman is nityam. So, Shubhram, it is pure. Brahman is neither impure nor subject to impurity. Like space, it is asangaha, or not affected by anything happening within. So it can't be sullied or unsullied. It is untainted and devoid of parts, therefore it is always pure. Jyotisham, it conveys of all lights. In macrocosm, illuminators or the celestial bodies, Example, the sun and the moon. Even the awareness of illuminators by Jivatma is due to the splendor of the elegance of Atma within. At the macrocosmic level, the means of knowledge like words, sense organs, mind and consciousness are also called lights. Jyotihi here refers to the self-effulgent Atman. The ultimate light, Atma Jyoti, is capable of revealing itself, and the mind, which in turn is blessed by the Atma, reveals everything else. Now, where does this Atma reside? Its location is indicated in the next slide. Hiranmaya is effulgent and brilliant. The golden effulgence coupled with intelligence and knowledge is capable of reflecting the consciousness within, which makes the mind sentient. Pare Kosha is the highest or the supreme kosha, and it refers to the Upalabdhi Sthanam of Atma, the Anandamaya kosha or Vijnanamaya kosha. Ananda nature of Atma is reflected in this moksha, being closest to the Atma. This innermost kosha is referred to denote Atman as if it is encased in it. This kosha has most subtle sattvika vrittis. Puja Swami Paramarthananda ji compares mind to a temple. Original sacredness of a temple belongs to the deity within, and the prakarams are sacred because of the borrowed sacredness. Similarly, our mind is like a temple, and it is not sacred by itself since it serves as an abode of Brahman. The mind becomes Parakoshaha, the supreme abode, like sacred Garbha Gruha. Atma Vidaha, the knowers of the Atma. The discriminative people who are capable of differentiating from every other thought the consciousness as the witness of everything in the world. The knowers of the self also know that Jivatma and Paramatma reveal the same Brahman or the Chaitanya. Shankara Bhashya defines Viduhu as Atma Pratyaya Anusarinaha. Atma Pratyaya is the I thought. It is free from attributes like Kartrutva and Bhoktrutva. A consistent follower of I thought to realize Atman is a Viduhu. Bhashya Artha Pratyaya Anusarinaha are those who follow idam vrittis that take their minds away from oneself in the pursuit of external objects of enjoyment. Thank you. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Thank you very much, Ramaji. That was a nice explanation of a very often quoted mantra. From now on, you will see a set of extremely beautiful mantras in the Mundaka Upanishad. And she has explained each word, Hiranmaye, Pare Koshe, Virajam, Brahma, Nishkalam. Nishkalam, that which cannot be divided into parts. Like, can you divide space into parts? You cannot. The word Jyotisham, Jyoti. Atma Vidu Vidaha, the knowers of the Atma say all this. So this is a Mahavakya mantra describing the glories or our glories, the true nature, that which cannot be sullied, that which is always pure. Two words are used, Virajam and Shubram. One from a negative angle, that it cannot be contaminated. The other, it's pure. And the key word here is Jyotisham Api Jyoti, the light of all lights, which will be explained in more detail in the next mantra by Dr. Kiran. There is our true nature. Our true nature is there in our intellect. Our intellect or Vijnanamaya Kosha is very brilliant. So we need to know about that consciousness, and we need to be able to be aware of that consciousness. We come to the last mantra for today that will be explained by Dr. Kiran. Dr. Kiran, please.
Hari Om. Guru Bhyo Namaha. As we move our journey inwards, the topic becomes more subtler and that much difficult to understand. This mantra is discussed in 3 Upanishads, Brahma Sutra and Gita. So that much important this is. Let us study this. Na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam, Nema vidyuto bhanti kuto yamagni tameva bhanta anubhati sarva tasya Bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. Ever the illuminator, never the illuminate, never the experienced, ever the knower, never the known. Who is this Atma? Surya tatra nabhati. Even the sun is inadequate to reveal him. Why? And who is this Atma? We will study further. I will take forward from where Rama Madam has explained. Jyoti often means, like that in explained in Ken Upanishad, anything that reveals, that is eye, ear, etc. Every pramanam can be used as a, is called a light. For example, in this diagram, I want to see some object, I use telescope and I use my eyes. So the object, sense organ, mind, intellect, and ultimately I, the consciousness, are all lights. Who is this light of the light? Let us study further. By my mere presence, I reveal all these. Anubhati sarvam. Take this example. There is little darkness, there is nothing is seen. Then a light is shined and I see the chair. And next the chair is removed. The light reveals nothing. In and through all these experience, who is there? I am there. Do I need light to reveal me? No. Do I need somebody else to reveal me? No. But just because I was there, even nothing, chair, light, everything was illumined. So I, the consciousness, is the real me or light of all lights. Let us study this. So I don't need any, when sun itself cannot illumine, then what about Chandra, which is reflected light, or stars, and Vidyuti, that is flashes. Kutomagni, what to talk, this small candle, Deepa Arati, this mantra is usually chanted during Arati. Then what is this to reveal the Lord or the me? So we chat, slap cheeks like this. All illuminaries or luminaries or sense organs reveal particular field like smell, nose, etc. But I reveal everything, including these luminaries. Tameva bhantam. Let us study the three key words, bhati, bhanam, anubhanam, and vibhanam. All these have ba or light in common. Janami, a beautiful word. That happens in the waking state. Whenever we want to experience anything, we need to know two things. One is jana, revelation of the object. Indeed, it is a jana hai, and me, the subject. And this me or the knower is called bhanam. And the process of this knowing is called as anubhanam. Next slide, please. I, the knower, is always self-revealing and unchanging. Like whether I am knowing this object, whether I am knowing some other object, I cannot change. Whereas the object is always changing and needs some medium to reveal it. So I, the Sakshi, Chaitanyam, always coexist. If I want to experience anything, I need any tool to experience. But what happens when I see the tool, I get obsessed with it and erroneously get anchored to it and get into samsara. This is called the tragedy of errors. Then when Atma, that is I, shines without any medium, it is called as Bhanam or Bimba Chaitanyam. When Atma manifests through the reflecting medium, that is mind, it is called as Pratibimba Chaitanya. Example, sun can be called a Bhati, whereas night, moon, what reflects the sunlight is called Vibhati. And during Sushupti, when I am not revealing anything, I am by myself, it is called as Atma Bhati. So Shaunaka began by asking the question, Sarvam idam vijnate. So what is that knowing which everything is known? The Guru answers, idam sarvam vibhati. By my mere presence alone, everything is revealed. And with medium, it is revealed as a world, and without medium, I is revealed as Atma, the self-illuminating consciousness. I am the knower, subject. I am never the object. I don't need any medium to reveal. I am Swayam Prakasham. Because of me alone, I, you, and everything is revealed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kiran, for giving us an explanation of a very popular verse. Every time we have Arati in the temples, you will see the priests will be chanting this mantra, Na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam. And as you said, this comes in so many Upanishads. It will come in Kathopanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, and of course, Brahma Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, Dakshinamurti Stotra, all in different forms, the same mantra comes. You have explained, but I will still explain a few things. These are fundamental aspects of Vedanta, and if these are understood, a difficult verse like this will be understood. First is, to prove the existence of any object in the world is possible only if it is knowable. That means that word for knowability is called prameyatvam. Now, I will explain again, just be attentive. Supposing there is some object in this world that cannot be experienced by anybody at any time. The example usually given is, there is a horn on my head, but nobody can experience that. Will you believe? You cannot believe about the existence. That means to prove the existence of something in this world, it requires someone who can verify whether that something is existent or not. Therefore, we go to the next step. Any object can become knowable only if there is a knower. So when the object is therefore called prameyam, the knower is called pramata. All right, these are two terms if we need to become familiar with it. Therefore, every object has a dependent existence on a knower. That means because of the presence of the knower lends existence to a particular object, which means any object which has a dependent existence. Now the teachers say that the beauty of a person is because of the makeup or jewelry or the dress. Now such a beauty, is it real beauty or it is dependent on the makeup, on the dress and the jewelry? See, any beauty or anything which is existent, which is dependent on something, is not as real. If there is something in this world that is dependent on an observer, that something therefore is of a lower order of reality. Suddenly you will see this whole world is an object of my experience, and therefore the teachers call these as mithya. Now, the knower in me is a limited knower, pramata. The objects, therefore, all of them depend on consciousness, which means we are talking about Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Consciousness alone has divided itself into two. The one, pramata in me, the prameyam. In Mandukya Upanishad, it's divided into, the knower is called Vishwa, the world of experiences is called Virat. You will understand this in the dream. I myself have created a dream world. In Mandukya, it is known as Hiranyagarbha. I create a dream body for myself who interacts with this world. That is called the Taijasa. The whole dream is between Taijasa and Hiranyagarbha. Now, both of them are mithya. Both of them are dependent on this consciousness. Now, this has to be understood. If this is understood, then you will understand this mantra, na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam. Now, consciousness by itself need not be revealed. It is self-evident. And because of this self-evident consciousness, everything that illumines this world, like the sun, the moon, the stars, the lightning, or our Deepa, all of them are known because of the light of consciousness. Therefore, this mantra makes us our attention to the light of consciousness. Because of the light of consciousness in me, this whole world around me has become existent. Difficult to believe, but that is the heights to which the Vedanta helps us to understand our true nature, that I am Satyam and everything else is dependent on this consciousness that is there within me. We will now conclude today's class by a chanting of this beautiful composition by Jagat Guru Bharati Tirtha Garuda Gamana by Meenakshi Shanmugam. Meenakshi, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Garuda Gamana Tava Charana Kamalamiha Manasila Satu Mama Nityam गरुडगमन तव चरण कमलमिह मनसि लसतु मम नित्यं मनसि लसतु मम नित्यं मम तापमपाकुरु देवा मम पापमपाकुरु देव मम तापमपाकुरु देव मम पापमपाकुरु देव जलजनयन विधिनमुचिहरन मुख विबुध विनुत पद पद्मा जलजनयन विधिनमुचिहरन मुख विबुध विनुत पद पद्मा विबुध विनुत पद पद्मा मम तापमपाकुरु देवा मम पापमपाकुरु देव मम तापमपाकुरु देव मम पापमपाकुरु देव भुजगशयन भव मदन जनक मम जनन मरण भयहारी भुजगशयन भव मदन जनक मम जनन मरण भयहारी जनन मरण भयहारी मम तापमपाकुरु देवा मम पापमपाकुरु देव मम तापमपाकुरु देवा मम पापमपाकुरु देव शंख चक्रधर दुष्ट दैत्यहर सर्वलोक शरणा शंख चक्रधर दुष्ट दैत्यहर सर्वलोक शरणा सर्वलोक शरणा मम तापमपाकुरु देव मम पापमपाकुरु देव मम तापमपाकुरु देव मम पापमपाकुरु देव अगणित गुणगण अशरण शरणद विदलित सुर विपुजाल अगणित गुणगण अशरण शरणद विदलित सुर रिपुजाल विदलित सुर रिपुजाल मम तापमपाकुरु देव मम पापमपाकुरु देव मम तापमपाकुरु देव मम पापमपाकुरु देव भक्तवर्यमिह भूरि करुणया पाहि भारती तीर्थम् भक्तवर्यमिह भूरि करुणया पाहि भारती तीर्थम् पाहि भारती तीर्थम् मम तापमपाकुरु देव मम पापमपाकुरु देव मम तापमपाकुरु देव मम पापमपाकुरु देव गरुडगमन तव चरण कमलमिह मनसि लसतु मम नित्यम् गरुडगमन तव चरण कमलमिह मनसि लसतु मम नित्यम् मनसि लसतु मम नित्यम् मम तापमपाकुरु देव मम पापमपाकुरु देव मम तापमपाकुरु देव मम पापमपाकुरु देव मम तापमपाकुरु देव मम पापमपाकुरु देव श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम.
Thank you, Meenakshi Madam, for a mesmerizing, melodious, divine chanting. Thank you all teachers for a wonderful session. Next Friday, on 2nd September 2022, we will commence study of Purushottama Yoga with first 5 verses of that 15th chapter. Before that, on Monday, 29th August 2022, let's log in for Disha 24 at 6:45 p.m. In this episode of Disha, we will be completing chapter 5 with the study of verses 27 to 29. We will also try to understand Shariratraya as explained in Tattva Bodha. Hari Om. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.